Welcome back to another episode of Pitch This.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror and he is no friend to me.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Pitch This here on the MrEliMac YouTube channel. I'm your host, MrEliMac, and today I have decided to go back into the realm of video games. Yes, I've been playing quite a few video games over there on Twitch, and I've gotten the video game bug. And another thing that I've been enjoying and been doing is watching the newest show on Disney Plus, Marvel's Daredevil Born Again. And then watching that show and playing a lot of video games gave me the inspiration to pitch a video game of Insomniac's version of Daredevil. This has been a video game that a lot of people have been hoping we would eventually get, however we haven't gotten it yet. Insomniac is currently busy working on Wolverine, and Spider-Man 3 is going to be happening eventually in the future. However, I decided, why not I pitch what I would do with a Daredevil video game, specifically done by Insomniac. But before I get into the pitch, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you can be up to date with all the videos I have here on the channel. Also, hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified whenever a new video like this comes your way. So, the way I'm going to be breaking this down is the different acts of the game, because whenever you play Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man, and even Miles Morales and the second Spider-Man, it's sort of broken into 3 acts, where Act 1 is focused on this, Act 2 is focused on this, and Act 3 is focused on that. For example, in the first Spider-Man game, Act 1 is very much the aftermath of Kingpin going to jail. Act 2 is very much trying to find Martin Lee and dealing with the inner demons and Mr. Negative. And Act 3 is finally getting the Sinister Six and focusing on Doc Ock as the main antagonist. That's sort of how Insomniac works with their Marvel games, and so I'm going to be breaking it down this way for Marvel's Daredevil. And the first act is going to be very much working, and I'm going to be doing like, oh, this is sort of the Daredevil plot, and this is the Matt Murdock plot, and here's sort of the major things. And the game is very much focused on the Kingpin not being in power and the Kingpin still being in jail, and dealing with someone trying to fill in that vacuum in Hell's Kitchen. And for Daredevil, he is very much going to be trying to focus on trying to stop the criminals that are vying for that position, for that Kingpin spot. And the big opening fight scene at the beginning, like all Insomniac games do, is going to be dealing with Daredevil in the courtroom doing his Matt Murdock stuff, and then Gladiator comes in, who is someone that is working for the new person trying to be the new head boss of Hell's Kitchen and of New York City, and him trying to get someone that is working for the new boss and trying to get him out. And then that's when Matt Murdock would quickly change into the Daredevil costume through all the chaos, and we would get Daredevil trying to go after Gladiator and all the people that are working for the new boss and trying to go throughout Hell's Kitchen. The game would very much center on Hell's Kitchen. We would see Daredevil go throughout Manhattan, but it would mainly focus on Hell's Kitchen, and then we would ultimately get to the final part of this opening set piece where we see Daredevil and Gladiator have a hand-to-hand combat. That way we can get used to what it's like working with the combat of it. And because of Daredevil's heightened vision, I would have a moment to where whenever it's like dark or if there's smoke around, there's like Daredevil vision, where it's like the entire screen is red and we can just see what is happening, sort of like Batman's detective vision. That's sort of what it would be like whenever it's like, oh, we're having to force the character to go into a dark room, or there's smoke that is filling the air. We are going to be using Daredevil vision for that. That's one of the major mechanics in it. The rest of the time we'll be seeing it as normal, like how in Spider-Man we can just see things normally, because I don't want the game to be completely red the entire time. But the main thing, again, is a new mysterious figure is emerging to sort of be the new Kingpin, and all the people that are working for this mysterious figure, like Gladiator, is leaving symbols of an owl as the calling card, and Daredevil would begin investigating this new force while dismantling other small criminals that are working for him and other people that are just working in the world of New York. And ultimately we would get to a point where we would find out who this new mysterious figure is, which is, if you haven't figured out by the owl symbol, the owl. Leland Owlsley would be the new mobster trying to get into power of trying to fill in the Kingpin void. But that's sort of what Daredevil is doing for Matt Murdock. He is trying to be his lawyer self, and he's dealing with a lot of increasing cases coming onto his desk, and many of the victims that he is representing are the victims of the new crime syndicate, like people who are being accused of being a part of this new crime syndicate, even though they have no connection to that organization whatsoever. And he is very much working as well as Matt Murdock in this investigation into this criminal empire, trying to get deeper into the underworld. And there are a lot of moments where he's torn between working with his clients and working as Daredevil, causing a lot of rift between him and Foggy and Karen. And there would be some moments where some of the people that he's trying to defend have a brand or a tattoo of the owl symbol, but they would later be said of, oh, these are people that have just got out. Even the people themselves would be like, no, we got out of that. We didn't want to work with that person anymore. And there would even be moments where you would have to play as Matt Murdock in this lost scenario, trying to work your way. Maybe there'll be cutscenes and not actual playable moments, but I would want to try to have a moment to where you get to see Matt Murdock the lawyer as well as playing as Daredevil. And again, it would begin to strain the connection he has between Foggy and Karen, who still don't know that he is Daredevil. And the major key plot point would be that Matt would be dealing with a major case tied to the owl's growing influence, and he must balance the courtroom strategy with his investigation as Daredevil, all while his firm's future hangs in the balance. And again, the major plot point that would end Act 1 is the owl being introduced to Daredevil when Daredevil is basically at his lowest. He just got beat up by a few guys via cutscene, and the owl is revealed as like, oh hey, I'm the big bad of this game. And then we get into Act 2, which as Daredevil, it would be him moving closer, getting into fights with some of the lieutenants of the owl, such as the Masked Marauder, who would sort of serve as like the shocker role, as like, oh no, I'm trying to get out. I worked with him, but I'm trying to get out, and I want you to get away from me. And it would have Daredevil discovering more and more about the secrets of the owl's operations, but the city would become a lot more dangerous because of the owl's growing influence and him beginning to get all the pieces that he needed. However, Daredevil would be able to dismantle a lot of the network, and Daredevil would face internal struggles with himself as he begins to feel the weight of this mission on him, and he is beginning to think how far he's willing to go, because prior to this, though he had been fighting off against Daredevil, sort of similar to how Spider-Man has, he has never gone further into the darkness. He's never fully gone into the dark side in himself, and the owl is sort of pushing him to that point. And there would be another moment where he would face the Masked Marauder. Again, Marauder is just trying to get away and not be affected by all this, but ultimately Daredevil would fully beat him and send him to prison, and Daredevil would have to come in to confront the harsh realities of what it's like to be a vigilante. And again, with the Matt Murdock side of the story, Matt's obsession with the owl continues to consume him, and again, it's beginning to cause struggles in a lot of the cases he's going, and the cases he's even handling is beginning to reflect the tension that is happening in Hell's Kitchen. And one of the people that he is struggling with the most is Foggy, because Foggy is constantly trying to say, hey Matt, why are you doing this? Why aren't you fully investing into what we are working on? And Matt's like, well look, a lot of stuff is happening with this owl character. And Foggy's like, look, I understand, but you still need to get this done. You need to get all of this work done. If you're not getting it done, then why are you even here? And that, again, more conflict. And a lot of, like, the relationship between him and Karen, because I would even have in this game that Karen and Matt are together, And like that is sort of consuming everything that's happening with Daredevil, and the Owl is consuming himself and just sort of destroying that relationship. And one of the key moments is as he's trying to defend one of his clients who was an unwitting pawn in the Owl's network, forcing him to question whether the legal system can ever truly be trusted. But meanwhile, Daredevil confronts the Owl only to discover there's another part of him. And the final boss fight of Act 2 would be between Daredevil and the Owl would have a lot of tech on his side. He would like be able to fly around because of, in the comics, he can fly around a little bit. And like at the end of that fight, Daredevil would be like, okay, you're done. You're not going to be the Kingpin anymore. And the Owl would be like, no, I was never going to be the Kingpin. There's something more here and you don't understand. The person that's really in charge is, and he would get shot. The Owl would get killed in this game. We wouldn't see the Owl anymore. And then we would get the reveal of the actual main antagonist, who would be the Rose, aka Richard Fisk. And one of the key plot points that I would have early on, because this would be a twist, is that Richard Fisk would be introduced and as someone that would want to employ Nelson and Murdock as his lawyers, because he knows for a fact that people are going to look at him as Richard Fisk, the son of Wilson Fisk, and he doesn't want to be looked at as that. Throughout the entire game, I would even have him have meetings with Matt and say, look, I don't like what my father has been doing. I was never one that agreed with what he was doing. And sure, he wasn't mentioned in the Spider-Man game, but I feel like we could find a way to retcons, like, oh yeah, Fisk had a wife, had a son, and this is like who they are over here. Games do that a lot, comics do that a lot. I think it's easy to be able to get that into all of this. But yeah, it is revealed that Richard Fisk is actually the main antagonist, and that his entire thing is that he has wanted to do what his father's done, but he wanted to do it better. He saw what his father had done was pretty powerful and unique, but he always thought that his father wasn't strong enough and wasn't able to fully get along with the times. He always looked at his father as he was set in one way, and those ways were going away, hence why Spider-Man was able to beat him. I'm going to be improving that. I'm going to be having these costumed characters, these meta-human, these super-powered characters, and I'm going to hire them, and they're going to work for me, and that's going to cause every single masked vigilante to get wiped out, like you. And then the third act, as Daredevil is basically beaten and bloodied and battered, like the entire time, Act 3 is about Daredevil trying to face off against all these different people that work for Richard Fisk, like the Enforcers and Ant-Man. And it would get to the point where Daredevil is realizing that he is thinking he may not be strong enough to do this on his own, even though he's going to try to do this on his own. And all that is seeping into Matt's personal life, where he's not able to fully do a lot of his work anymore. In fact, he is barely going into the office because of everything that is happening with Richard Fisk and with Daredevil. In fact, there would be a moment where Matt Murdock and Richard Fisk would meet face to face. However, Richard Fisk doesn't know Matt's the Daredevil, even though Matt knows that Richard Fisk is Rose. And so throughout this point, we would have this very tense scene between them, like with Matt being like, I know exactly who you are and I don't like you anymore. And like, without actually saying I don't want to represent you anymore, he would basically say that and cause Richard Fisk to go away and be like, well, fine, I'm not going to give you my money. And Foggy's like, why did you do this? He was the one that's going to keep us afloat. Why'd you do this? And Matt's like, because of stuff in his past, he's not a good person. And Foggy would be like, he's trying to be different from his father. He's proven that multiple times. And Matt's like, you don't know him like I do. And Foggy would just be like, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. And that would ultimately bring a breaking point to his relationship with Karen and Foggy, to the point where Foggy would just be like, look, just go. If you don't want to do your work here, just get out of here. Just leave. And that would start a new dynamic with Matt. And we would get to the point of Matt fully like getting ready, and there would be a big fight scene. The final boss fight would be between Matt and Richard Fisk, Rose, and basically Rose having technology that could help him against Daredevil. Like, that would be sort of the final fight of a robotically enhanced Richard Fisk against Daredevil, and having moments to where Daredevil's abilities. Like, there would be a moment where beams would get falling on the floor, causing Matt to get disoriented and not being able to see what's happening around him. And that would be an opening for the Rose to attack, and then it'd be up to the players to try to avoid this without getting fully disoriented. And it would eventually get to a point where Matt is able to beat Richard Fisk, and there would be a point where Matt can determine whether he will kill Fisk or not, and ultimately he just knocks him out and Richard Fisk gets arrested. But again, the hole that Kingpin is left is still open, and Matt would try to go back. Like, the ending cap of the resolution of it all would Matt be trying to go back to the law firm, and Foggy basically saying, look, I know you've been under a lot of stress with everything that happened with the Owl and the Rose stuff, but I can't trust you anymore to do your job. So I'm gonna need you to leave fully. And so that's the sort of new status quo that we're gonna be going in when we get into a Daredevil 2. If I ever decide to pitch a Daredevil 2, is the idea of Matt no longer being Matt Murdock, which is the vigilante Daredevil, and trying to find a way to get back to Matt being a lawyer. Similar to how in the first Spider-Man game, the status quo was wrecked because Aunt May was killed. Like, Aunt May is dead at the end of Spider-Man. And it's because the video games are able to push the status quo and change the status quo. This game is going to be changing the status quo sort of permanently of Matt Murdock's not a lawyer at Nelson and Murdock anymore. It's not Nelson and Murdock anymore. It's just Nelson and Partners. And that's sort of the direction we'll be going with Matt because of all the struggles that were going on in this game. Pushing Matt to the point of he can't fully be in the job that he wants as Matt. And that's sort of the pitch of the game, because it would end with Matt on like a perch in Hell's Kitchen, maybe even at the gym that his father was at, and just staring down at the city of Hell's Kitchen in his Daredevil costume, basically resigned to, this is what I have left. And that is the pitch for Insomniac's Daredevil video game. What were your thoughts on the pitch? But very focused on telling the main story, and I didn't get into any side missions. That's normally what I do with video game pitches. I really only want to focus on the main story and not the side missions. If I want to do the side missions, maybe that'll be a future video on, hey, here is what I would do with the side missions, because I feel like the side missions alone could be their own video and not connected with the main story. But what were your thoughts on this pitch? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Were you indifferent to it? Whatever your thoughts, post them in the comments down below. And again, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you can be up to date with all the videos I have here on the channel. Also, hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified whenever a new video like this comes your way. But until then, I've been MrEliMac. You've been the audience, and I hope you all remember to have a great rest of the day.